All right, it's a Viva on the Street update. It's been a while, and it's been a while. This is now month 4, I believe. We are in month 4 of François Legault's 4-week curfew to flatten the curve. A 4-week curfew which was imposed in January 2021, nearly a year into the 2 weeks to flatten the curve so as not to overwhelm the healthcare facilities. Our government has weaponized our healthcare system. They have weaponized our healthcare system so that they can justify 130, 140 ICU patients, 500 hospitalizations to lock down a province of 8.5 million. Now, appreciate that, because instead of resolving what is clearly a problem, in that if our province cannot deal with these types of numbers, the problem is not necessarily the virus, but the healthcare system. For those of you who don't know, Pastor James Coates is the pastor of the Grace Life Church in Alberta, who was arrested and imprisoned for 35 days because he did not shut his church down in accordance with the edicts that were issued under the Health Act in Alberta. And based on some reporting from Rebel Media, Ezra Levant, and by the way, go support them if you can, because they are being dealt the hand that the social media overlords deal people like Ezra Levant and entities like Rebel Media. According to the reporting, at one point during the trial, when the health director or whomever had to justify why they showed up with armed police guards to make the arrests when Pastor Coates was nothing but a passive, compliant accused, apparently they said they did it for the media. They did it for the exposure. They did it for the impression that it would give. And I was just thinking, not that George Samuel is necessarily right or wrong, not that Putin is good, not that the trial was fair, just that who in God's name are we to be judging these foreign countries when this is what we are doing in our own country? We imprisoned, locked up a pastor for 35 days in jail, 2 weeks of which was solitary confinement, for a health violation and bail conditions. The health violations which never carried any jail sentence. And we're going to sit here and judge Putin and judge Russia and judge the validity of the trials in Russia when we're basically conducting our own Russian-esque type trials here?
Hypocrites all!
There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
George Orwell
warned us very clearly about the system that a lot of people, particularly on the left, but any authoritarian who is ideological and organized, will use, which is twisting concepts and abusing words or semantics. Meaning, they like to reverse terms. In 1984, they had slogans. For instance, freedom is slavery. Right? It turns it upside down. Clearly, slavery is slavery and freedom is freedom. But once you indoctrinate people with this and you enforce it with a constant simmering threat, an atmosphere where they're always worried about asking questions and thinking too much, well, these things become imprinted on them. They pass it on to their children, they enforce it on their neighbors, their family. And what we see now is that the government of Canada is detaching and releasing and sending out their own thought police. Propaganda. They call themselves liaisons. They say that what they're doing is educating people. But really what they're doing, and the latest example of this by a York police officer in the Greater Toronto area, is so obscene that I don't think that this man that's doing it should have the right to not just wear a badge, he should be in prison for wearing a badge while he's doing it.
And if they refuse to, and they continue to commit the offense, our only option then is to go into enforcement.
Commit the offense of embracing their charter rights. Really, officer? Really?
Again, charter rights, section 1 of the charter. Please look it up. You have to read the first chapter of the book before you go to the second chapter. Chapter 1 said these are limited.
I'm sorry, I don't need an armed police officer lecturing me on charter rights when you're about to shut down a peaceful protest.
It is so beneath the scope of morality There is no way he believes what he's saying, and he loves the deception and the cruelty that he is pushing on other people. So most people, like most places in Canada, have not read everything in the Constitution. And sadly, as the years have gone by, we become less and less educated about precisely what's worded in it and how those words affect our everyday life. But what he does is he uses something called Section 1. Section 1, and what he points out, is it has notwithstanding clauses. These are limitations in cases of emergency or where there is a conflict between different people's rights under the same charter in court.
I'm just explaining to you how a provincial law supersedes Section 2 of the Charter. So right now, Section 1 of the Charter says you can be out, it's a stay-at-home order, and you can be out for these certain purposes. They do not fall within those certain purposes, so technically they shouldn't be out, and they're in contravention of a provincial law.
Now, what he doesn't say to the public that he keeps repeating this to, and this is where it goes beyond any possibility that he doesn't know what he's doing, is he leaves out the part where it says that they must be limited as possible, that only in the most extreme and limited time-wise and power-wise situation should these powers be limited under the Constitution. And it should always be for the greater enforcement of more constitutional rights, and it should be done in front of a judge as quickly as possible for a judicial review. None of this has been done. 15 months, people in this country have been without constitutional rights. The government, federal government in Canada, is enacting legislation to take complete control of the internet. This cop is talking about how you can still protest, just not in person. Call him on the phone, baby. Give him a ring. That's not what the people who wrote the Constitution had in mind. They didn't have, as my friend Smashlock pointed out, they don't have social media back in the 80s. It didn't exist. And protests weren't done on the phone or by regular mail. They were done in person. This is organizing. This is why Martin Luther King Jr. was correct to point out, I have read somewhere about the right to peacefully protest. I have read somewhere about the right to assemble. I have read somewhere about freedom of speech. And I repeat what he says, but for Canada, I have read somewhere by this Prime Minister's father to ensure our individual liberty. And this policeman and all the other propaganda soldiers that are coming out to attack your understanding of your freedoms, understand this. What he has done is he has inverted the Constitution by perverting that one article and leaving those core parts out, so that it actually turns every one of your rights in the Charter under our Constitution into a target on your back, as your rights that can be stripped away now by that interpretation. It turns it from a weapon to protect you to hunt you all down. You need to read through the Constitution, and for anyone out there who's endorsing this and still pushing it and delightfully talking about how we're all going to get sick if we don't listen, you people are all going to die, your kids are going to get sick. Let me be clear about this. And other people who love their freedom, and there are millions of us in Canada, I am speaking for them as well. My liberties are not conditional to your approval or your opinion. If you push us, we will push back. If you want to live civilly, then you need to restore the Constitution and learn that you cannot dictate other people's lives. It is liberty or it is conflict. Time to choose.
You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always, there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.